The Aurelians arrived in a blaze of radiant arrogance. To the naked eye, they looked like beings of light. Luminous forms walking across the decks of their massive ships, shimmering with the glow of captured suns. They announced themselves on every frequency, speaking in voices that were at once melodic and cruel. We are eternal. We are gods, neo-mortals, and we will permit you to serve. Entire colonies had already fallen in days. The Aurelians conquered not with overwhelming firepower alone, but with their unsettling refusal to die. No matter how many times they were cut down, their forms rebuilt themselves, flesh weaving back together in waves of nanites, as if reality itself refused to let them perish. Humanity was late to the galactic stage, barely a century into interstellar travel. Most of the older civilizations whispered warnings. Resistance was futile. Survival depended on submission. But the United Terra Navy was not in the business of bowing. And so the ISS Dauntless was sent to meet the so-called gods. Captain Elena Reyes stood at the forward viewport, hands clasped behind her back. Her uniform was crisp, though the lines of fatigue beneath her eyes betrayed how long she had gone without sleep. She had fought a dozen battles in her career. But this one weighed differently. Command wasn't about her own survival anymore. It was about the lives of everyone behind her, both on this ship and in the colonies that depended on it. Her voice carried with calm precision. Status report. At the tactical console, Sergeant Mac McAllister slouched in his chair, boots propped against the frame. Regulations forbade the posture, but Mac had never been on good terms with regulations. His grin was a dare to the universe itself. We're locked, loaded, and still ridiculously outnumbered, ma'am, he said. I count 6 Aurelians cruisers. Each one's about 3 times our size. Odds are fantastic, if you're rooting for the other guys. Reyes didn't rebuke him. She had long ago learned that Mac's irreverence wasn't a lack of discipline. It was a shield against fear. His sarcasm steadied others as much as it irritated her. Engineering? She asked. Dr. Kiran Patel's voice answered, tinged with the clipped efficiency of a man forever juggling 10 thoughts at once. Reactor output stable. Shields holding at peak. I've rerouted secondary conduits to account for thermal overloads, though I'd advise against taking sustained hits. These ships weren't designed for prolonged duels with immortals. You're saying we can't win, Mac muttered. I'm saying our chances improve with ingenuity. Fortunately, that's a human specialty, Patel replied dryly. At navigation, Lieutenant Juno Vega kept her gaze on the starfield. Younger than most of the bridge crew, her enthusiasm was tempered but not extinguished by the looming threat. She spoke softly, but with conviction. They think themselves gods because no one has found their weakness. But there's always a weakness. Always. Reyes let the words hang for a moment. The crew needed belief. Juno's idealism bordering on naivete. Sometimes grated, but in this moment, it was exactly the spark they required. A chime announced an incoming transmission. The Aurelians had decided to speak. The viewport shimmered, and a figure appeared. Tall, radiant, humanoid in outline but too perfect, too symmetrical to be mistaken for flesh and blood. Its voice resonated in chords that seemed to echo inside the skull. We are the Aurelians. We are the eternal flame, the undying sovereigns. You are dust, soon forgotten. Surrender your vessel, and we will permit you the honor of servitude. Max snorted. Great. Glowing space cultists. Just what I needed today. Reyes stood unmoved. This is Captain Elena Reyes of the ISS Dauntless. Humanity does not kneel. Not to gods and not to pretenders. The Aurelian's form tilted its head, as though amused. Mortals always mistake defiance for courage. Fire your weapons, if you wish. We will rise again and again until your will is broken. You cannot kill eternity. The transmission cut, leaving silence heavier than any insult. Reyes turned to her crew. We are not here to worship. We are here to fight. Ready all stations. The bridge hummed with tense activity. Patel's fingers danced across the console, rerouting power. Juno plotted evasive patterns, her brow furrowed in concentration. Mac finally swung his boots to the floor, cracking his knuckles with a grin. Finally, he said, let's see how godly they look when we kick their teeth in. Reyes suppressed a flicker of a smile. He was reckless, yes, but his bravado had a way of cutting to the terror that gnawed at the edges of her command. The first volley came without warning. Brilliant lances of energy tore across the void, slamming against the dauntless shields. The ship shuddered violently. Sparks cascaded from a console. Alarms shrieked. Shields down to 70%. Patel barked. Return fire. Reyes ordered. The dauntless spat plasma bolts across the battlefield. For a moment, triumph surged as one of the Aurelian's cruisers cracked open under the barrage. Flames blossomed in the void. But the victory was short-lived. The wreckage shimmered, and then, impossibly, the ship began knitting itself back together. Hull plates sealed, gashes healed, and from within the debris, glowing figures are formed. Juno's voice trembled. They just rebuilt the entire cruiser. On the comms, laughter echoed, sweet, terrible, merciless. Mac muttered, "Yeah, okay, that's cheating." Patel's eyes narrowed. He wasn't laughing. He was already calculating, analyzing, searching. "No system is infinite," he whispered, almost to himself. "Not even theirs." Reyes gripped the edge of the console, the weight of command pressing down harder than the ship's failing shields. She had known this battle would be difficult. She hadn't expected the enemy to rise from death itself. For a heartbeat, she felt the creeping edge of despair. Were they truly fighting gods? No. Humanity had never believed in the impossible. Not for long. She straightened her posture, her voice cutting through the chaos. Maintain fire. Keep them busy. Somewhere inside their miracle, there's a flaw, and we're going to find it. The crew obeyed, battered but unbroken. Plasma fire lit the void as mortals stood against immortals, the storm of battle swallowing all hesitation. On the bridge of the Dauntless, amid the chaos, one truth settled like iron. The Aurelians could claim godhood all they wished. Humanity would answer the same way it always had, by fighting, by adapting, by refusing to kneel. And so the war began. The Dauntless writhed under the strain of combat. Every impact rattled through bulkheads like the blows of a celestial hammer. Shields flared, flickered, and rebuilt themselves, but the Aurelians never tired. Their ships healed as quickly as they were wounded, radiant cruisers weaving themselves back together, while their crews mocked humanity with laughter that echoed across every comm channel. On the bridge, Captain Reyes braced herself against the railing. "Keep firing. Force them to adapt to us." "They're not adapting," Patel muttered from engineering. His fingers blurred over displays, eyes darting between cascading streams of data. "They're simply undoing our progress. Every hit we score is erased before it even matters." "Then make it matter," Reyes said, her tone sharp as a blade. Patel exhaled through his nose, annoyed but energized. "Working on it." A ripple of plasma streaked across the viewport. One of the Aurelians appeared in holographic form again, luminous eyes burning with condescension. "You persist, mortals. Admirable but futile. Watch as eternity erases your defiance." The image dissolved as quickly as it had come. Mac leaned back in his chair, helmet under one arm, smirk in full force. "I'm starting to think they bill by the monologue. Every 5 minutes, another sermon. Better than silence." Juno replied without looking up from navigation. Her voice was calm, but her knuckles whitened on the controls. "If they're talking, it means they're not finished with us yet." Reyes recognized the strain in her pilot's tone. Juno was the youngest officer aboard, and though her optimism burned bright, she had never been tested in battles like this. "Lieutenant," Reyes said, softer now, "keep us in the fight. That's all that matters." "Yes, Captain," Juno replied, steadier. Another barrage rocked the ship. Systems screamed warnings and the lighting flickered. Patel cursed under his breath, then raised his voice. "Captain, I've analyzed their regeneration. It isn't divine, it's mechanical. Nanites reconstruct their hulls, their bodies, their everything. But those nanites don't work in isolation. They're networked. I'm reading constant signals broadcasting across their fleet, maintaining cohesion." Reyes pivoted to him, eyes narrowing. "So you're saying—" "I'm saying if we disrupt the signal, they stop resurrecting. Permanently." Mac let out a low whistle. "Kill the Wi-Fi, kill the gods." "I like it." Problem. Patel continued, ignoring the quip. The broadcast is shielded. I can detect it, but I can't penetrate it. Their flagship's field is too strong. Even our heaviest cannons can't cut through. The mood sagged like a cable under too much weight. Hope dangled, just out of reach. Reyes pressed her lips together. Then we find another way. Humanity didn't claw itself off Earth by accepting walls as permanent. Juno's voice piped up suddenly, hesitant but insistent. What if we don't need to cut through? What if we ride along? Patel blinked at her. Explain. Well, Juno said, chewing on her lower lip, signals aren't just about strength, they're about clarity. If we sync our emissions with theirs, even at lower power, we might slip something into their network, corrupt it from the inside. Mac raised an eyebrow. So you're suggesting we hack their immortality? Not hack. Interfere, Juno corrected. Like finding the right note to shatter glass. If we hit the right resonance, we could scramble their nanites. Patel considered her with new respect. It's reckless, it's untested, and it just might work. Reyes gave a single nod. Do it. Use whatever resources you need. Patel set to work immediately, already diagramming overlays across his console. I'll reconfigure the pulse cannons to carry a resonance payload, but we'll need precise modulation down to the microsecond. Lieutenant Vega, you'll be flying blind to keep the signal steady. I can do it, Juno said, determination replacing doubt. Mac leaned over with a grin. Just tell me when to pull the trigger. Reyes caught the exchange and felt, for a fleeting moment, the spark of unity that made this crew more than soldiers. Each of them carried their own brand of fire. Sarcasm, brilliance, hope, and together it forged something resilient enough to stare down immortals. Minutes stretched into hours as Patel and Juno calibrated the resonance. The Aurelians circled, launching sporadic attacks, as though toying with their prey. The bridge air grew heavy with the smell of ozone and sweat, but no one left their post. Finally, Patel straightened, dark rings beneath his eyes. We're ready. If this fails, it fails spectacularly. Understood, Reyes said. Lieutenant Vega, bring us into firing position. The Dauntless swung in a daring arc, sliding dangerously close to the lead cruiser. Alarm screamed. Shields faltered, but Juno's hands were steady on the controls. Resonance locked. Patel confirmed. Fire, Reyes ordered. The cannons roared, beams laced with harmonic interference, slamming into the Aurelian cruiser. For an instant, the ship convulsed unnaturally, light flickering across its surface like a storm-tossed sea. Mac leaned forward. Come on. But then the glow stabilized. The cruiser's hull smoothed, cracks resealed, and laughter once again filled the comms. Your noise is meaningless, the Aurelians crooned. We are eternal. You are dust. The bridge fell silent. Juno's face tightened, grief and anger warring. Patel's fist clenched, his theory collapsing under its own weight. Even Mac had no quip. Reyes refused to let despair take root. Her voice rang out, steel wrapped in calm. We hurt them. I saw it. For a moment, we touched the core of their power. That means they can bleed. And if they can bleed, they can die. Her certainty rekindled something in the crew, even if only embers. The Aurelians closed in, their radiant ships casting long shadows over the battered Dauntless. The battle was far from over. But for the first time, humanity had glimpsed a crack in Divinity's armor. The Dauntless drifted in the shadow of a pulsar, its hull scorched, its shields barely clinging to coherence. Sparks fizzed from ruptured conduits, painting the bridge in harsh flashes. Around them, the Aurelians closed in radiant ships like luminous predators circling wounded prey. Captain Reyes stood firm at the center of the chaos. Her voice calm though the situation was anything but. Dr. Patel, tell me you found something. Patel didn't look up from his console. His dark eyes burned with focus as lines of code and waveform diagrams rippled across his screen. Their lattice resists steady harmonics. We need something unstable, irregular, something their systems can't predict. So Jazz... Mac leaned against the station, smirk in place even as blood trickled down his temple from an earlier impact. Nothing screws with computer like good old human chaos. Reyes gave him a sharp look. Explain. Max spread his hands. I mean, their nanites run on order, right? Symmetry, precision, all that perfect godly nonsense. What if we throw the exact opposite at them? Noise, randomness, unpredictability? Not music. Madness. Patel frowned. That's idiotic. Idiotic enough to work. Juno said quietly. Her fingers danced over navigation, aligning the Dauntless with the pulsar's emissions. He's right. The Aurelians don't expect chaos. They expect logic, pattern, order. But we're human. We don't just improvise, we weaponize improvisation. Patel hesitated, then grudgingly nodded. Fine, I'll rewrite the modulation algorithms to inject irregular frequencies. But it won't be elegant. It'll be ugly. Mac grinned. Good. Let's make it ugly. The plan required insane timing. They would sync the Dauntless pulse cannons to the pulsar's rhythm, amplifying the interference until the Aurelian signal fractured. Patel's chaotic overlay would piggyback on the beam, seeding the enemy's nanite network with disorder. Reyes addressed her crew, voice carrying the steadiness they all needed. This is our moment. We're not aiming to destroy their ships. We're aiming to destroy their illusion. Once Immortality cracks, the rest will follow. Or we all blow up spectacularly, Mac muttered, checking the safety on his rifle. Comforting thought. Juno replied dryly, though a small smile tugged her lips. Stations ready, Patel called. His console glowed with unstable waveforms, jagged and unpredictable. Brace yourselves. This isn't science. This is art. Fire, Reyes commanded. The cannons roared, unleashing beams threaded with chaos. The pulsar's rhythm pounded to the hull, deep and resonant, like the universe itself was drumming for them. The energy slammed into the nearest Aurelian cruiser. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the light wavered. The cruiser convulsed, its radiant hull flickering like a dying star. Aboard, luminous figures staggered, their forms unraveling mid-transmission. The mocking laughter on comms twisted into shrieks of static. They're destabilizing. Patel shouted, disbelief cracking into exhilaration. It's working. Mac pumped a fist. Gods, meet entropy. But the triumph was short-lived. The cruiser spasmed violently, then righted itself, its systems reasserting control. The Aurelians reformed, faces twisted with something unfamiliar. Fear. They're learning, Patel warned. They're adapting to the noise faster than expected. Then give them more noise, Reyes ordered. Patel hesitated. If I push the resonance further, the backlash could fry our own systems. Shields, life support, engines. Do it, Reyes snapped. We either break them here, or we don't survive to try again. Patel swallowed hard, then drove the modulation into chaos. The ship shuddered violently. Panels burst, smoke billowed, but the resonance deepened. The Aurelians screamed again, this time not with derision but with pain. Across the view screen, one of their radiant bodies dissolved into ash, its nanites collapsing into inert dust. For the first time, an Aurelian died. Truly died. Silence held the bridge for a breathless second. Then Mac exhaled a low whistle. Well, I'll be damned. The gods bleed. Juno's eyes shone. If they can die, we can win. But the victory came at a cost. The Dauntless groaned as systems flickered offline. The ship's lights dimmed to emergency red. Warnings flooded Patel's console. Power cores overheating. Hull integrity dropping. Engines offline. We can't sustain this, Patel said grimly. Another push like that, and we'll tear ourselves apart before we finish them. The Aurelians, shaken but not broken, regrouped. Their flagship loomed larger, shields flaring as if in fury. A new transmission blared across the bridge, a voice deeper and colder than before. You dare wound eternity? You dare defy the divine? Then witness the price. The high ascendant had arrived. On the bridge, every eye turned to Reyes. She met their gazes one by one, drawing strength from the unlikeliest of warriors. Her sarcastic marine, her obsessive engineer, her dreaming pilot. None of them were flawless. None of them were gods. But together, they were something the Aurelians could never understand. Human. Reyes straightened, voice clear and unwavering. We've proven they can fall. Now we prove they can be broken. All stations. Prepare for final engagement. The crew moved as one, battered yet unbowed. Outside, the Aurelian fleet closed in, radiant ships casting divine shadows. Inside, aboard the Dauntless, mortals sharpened their defiance into a weapon. The battle was far from over, but the illusion of immortality had cracked. And through that crack, humanity prepared to strike. The Aurelian flagship eclipsed the stars, a vast cathedral of light bristling with weaponry. Its radiance dwarfed the battered Dauntless, casting the human ship in its shadow like an insect before a bonfire. On the bridge, Captain Reyes stood at the center of the storm, her jaw set. The high ascendant's voice filled the air, low and resonant, vibrating in the marrow. You have defiled eternity. You have slain my kin. For this blasphemy, I will erase your species from the stars. Mac muttered, Guy's got a flair for drama. Someone get him a stage. Reyes ignored him. Dr. Patel, can the resonance weapon hold? Patel's hands were blackened with soot, his hair wild, his face drawn with exhaustion. Barely. We've pushed the systems beyond safe thresholds. Another full burst could tear us apart. Then we make it count, Reyes said. At navigation, Juno's fingers trembled as she aligned their course with the flagship's heart. Her voice wavered, but her eyes gleamed with fire. Captain, if we ride the pulsar's edge, its gravity will slingshot us past their shields. It'll be dangerous. Everything we've done has been dangerous, Reyes said. Do it. Max stood, rifle slung over his shoulder. Permission to lead a boarding party, ma'am. If we're cracking the God's temple, I want to knock over a few statues. Denied, Reyes replied, but there was no harshness in her tone. You're more useful alive on this bridge. Keep your quips ready. Aye, Captain. The gods will die laughing. The Dauntless plunged into the pulsar's gravity well, hull groaning under forces no designer had intended. Juno's knuckles were white, sweat beading on her brow, but her voice remained steady. Trajectory locked. If I'm wrong, we'll smear across space like butter. Not wrong, Reyes said firmly. Never wrong. The pulsar spin flung them forward, the ship screaming as it broke into the Aurelian flagship's shield envelope. Weapons fire lanced past them, too slow to catch their desperate charge. Target locked. Patel shouted, Fire! The resonance cannon unleashed its chaotic song, frequencies jagged and unpredictable, laced with the raw pulse of the pulsar. The beam tore into the flagship, and for the first time, the divine light wavered. Inside the enemy ship, projections of the Aurelians flickered across the comms. Their bodies unraveled, nanites collapsing into dust. Their voices, once mocking, dissolved into static-laced screams. The high ascendant appeared on the viewport, his form towering, radiant wings outstretched. Even as his essence flickered, his voice carried terrible conviction. You cannot end me. I am the flame eternal. I am... Mac leaned closer to the display. About to have a bad day. Patel slammed a hand on his console. Resonance collapsing. We need one final surge, or it all unravels. Reyes turned to Juno. Options. Juno swallowed. We could divert the core itself into the beam. Direct overload. But if I miscalculate, we all go with them. The bridge fell silent. Reyes looked at each of them. Patel with his mind racing. Juno burning with untested courage. Max standing unshaken in the face of apocalypse. They were flawed, mortal, and utterly human. And they were enough. Do it, Reyes said. We end this now. The reactor scream reverberated through the ship. Lights dimmed, bulkheads buckled, and the air grew hot as the Dauntless poured its very heart into the resonance. The beam struck the Aurelian flagship with a thunderclap of energy. Its radiant hull rippled, cracked, and at last shattered. The high ascendant's image convulsed, his voice breaking into fractured syllables. I am eternal. Then his form dissolved into nothing. The flagship ruptured in a burst of extinguished light, fragments scattering across the void like ashes cast into the stars. On the bridge, The crew stared in stunned silence. For a heartbeat, there was only the sound of their ragged breathing. Then Mac leaned back with a grin. Well, guess we just killed a god. Patel laughed once, bitter and joyous at once. Not gods, just mortals with better toys. Juno's eyes glistened. Then maybe we're not mortals with worse toys. Maybe we're something more. Reyes exhaled, a slow release of tension she hadn't realized she held. We're human. That's all we need to be. Word spread faster than light. Across the galaxy, species once cowed by Aurelian rule heard whispers that the immortals had fallen. Chains broke. Rebellions rose. The Dauntless limped away from the battlefield, scarred but unbroken. Its crew carried no divine glow, no immortal essence, only bruises, burns, and a stubborn refusal to yield. In the quiet aftermath, Reyes stood at the viewport, watching the scattered remains of the flagship drift into the void. She spoke softly, more to herself than the others. They called themselves gods. But gods don't bleed. Gods don't die. They were never gods at all. Patel stepped beside her, his voice gentler than usual. And yet, Captain, you believe we could face them. Reyes allowed herself the smallest smile. Belief wasn't the hard part. Holding the line, that was harder. That's what makes us who we are. Juno turned from navigation, her youthful wonder undimmed despite the horrors they'd survived. Do you think the galaxy will see us as gods now? Mac barked a laugh. Please, no. One set of smug immortals was bad enough. Reyes shook her head. No gods. No masters. Just people. People who adapt. People who fight. People who dream. The stars stretched endlessly before them, unclaimed, unbowed. The Dauntless sailed on, battered but triumphant, carrying mortals who had shattered immortality. The war was far from finished. But one truth was carved into the bones of the galaxy. Humanity did not kneel.